Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Pilgrimage. I am standing in the traditional location of Akeldama, the field of blood associated with Judas's betrayal of Jesus, and the land that was then purchased with the 30 coins that he received from his betrayal. There is a bit of a discrepancy in the biblical text between Matthew and the book of Acts. One, in terms of how Judas died. Did he hang himself from a tree, or did he fall headfirst from an escarpment or from a small cliff? And likewise, in terms of who actually purchased the field, was it a field that Judas purchased himself, or something that after his death the high priests purchased? But traditionally, Akeldama has always been located here, just up off the Hinnom Valley. We're immediately south of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is right on this hill, and I can see part of the Temple Mount, the Haram Sharif, even from here, and the Mount of Olives. But Akeldama, besides just being this field of blood associated with Judas, has this connotation as being a field to bury foreigners, to bury strangers, to bury pilgrims. In the Crusader period, in the 12th century, we have one text that talks about how one of the hospitals, one of the hospices up in the old city of Jerusalem, that there an average of 50 pilgrims per day were dying. There was no guarantee about pilgrimage, especially if there was some disease or ailment going through. And so part of that, just imagine that, how much kind of mass burial there were of pilgrims during some of these periods that had nothing to do with violence or conflict, but simply illness and disease. And here in Akeldama, a traditional place over the centuries of burying pilgrims in mass graves. This is a charnel pit from the Crusader period, again a place of mass graves. But as we're talking pilgrimage, then the setting of Akeldama is a perfect place to think a little bit more about how precarious pilgrimage has been over the centuries, and how we can think a little bit about a spirituality of departure before we go on any trip today, whether it's Jerusalem or different pilgrimages around the world, different types of religious travel. And so I want to talk for a few moments about getting your house in order. The spirituality of departure is very practical, very logistical. You can think about planning any trip, but it's also very symbolic. There are things that have a sense of ritual, a sense of meaning, that are meant to put our minds into the identity of being a pilgrim, to help us think about the trip ahead. And so the first thing that we can do to kind of get our house in order has to do with reconciliation. Before a pilgrim goes on a pilgrimage, not knowing whether the pilgrim's going to come back, is a sense of reconciling at home in one's home community with one's everyday friends, family, people that you've offended or that you have some type of tension or conflict with, let alone kind of more kind of local enemies or people that you have a poor relationship with. That can look, like various gestures of from having a difficult conversation, from offering a compliment, writing a letter, doing a kind of a random act of kindness. But there's ways of thinking through, who do I need to reconcile with? What are the difficult conversations? Pilgrimage is a sense of turning a new page, becoming a new person. And so pilgrimage gives us the opportunity that we should have every day, opportunity to think in terms of positive relationships with one another. As I'm going to say, pilgrimage is a way of improving our relationship with God, with the self, and the other, and that other is not always the foreign other that we encounter in foreign places, but the other are everyday relationships that we can work on and ask for forgiveness, also to forgive other people before we embark on a journey. The second thing is more material, and that has to do with debts. And again, not suggesting this all can be done but that's paying off our debts before we leave. A medieval pilgrim would pretty much need to do that, but again, this may just be a symbolic or representative portion or fraction of a debt. Even if you just pay a small amount, that becomes one of these acts that puts you into the practice, into the tradition, into the identity of being a pilgrim. And then the last two have to do with different types of wills. Most people, I hope, already have one, but making sure your advanced healthcare directive or your living will is in order. But then also your final, your last will and testament, in terms of where your belongings, where your things will go in case of death. Again, these are difficult issues. We're not wanting to scare anyone from pilgrimage, but pilgrimage historically has been precarious. That's why we have images of it being a journey of perseverance, walking through the valley of the shadow of death. And here in the Hinnom Valley, which is also associated with child sacrifice in the Old Testament, Jesus himself associates it with hell and the unquenchable fires and the gnashing of teeth. We have right here also the location of Akeldama, that was a pilgrimage site that pilgrims have visited over the centuries, but quite literally and sadly a place for pilgrim burial. So that's us talking pilgrimage, about the spirituality of departure, of reconciliation, of paying off debts, of getting your living will and your will in order so that you can assume the mantle of pilgrimage, that you can free yourselves from those things that kind of hold you down and bind you, to fully and symbolically and spiritually enter into the journey ahead. We're talking pilgrimage from Akeldama. See you next time.